Hello again. Welcome to another lesson, Algebra 1. Today we are covering section 10.6, using the quadratic formula to solve equations. So this will be our second method, that algebraic method that we solve any quadratic equation. Okay. So a warm-up though is review from our first method, completing the square method. And remember, this works on any quadratic equation also. We just have to get it into this form first. So not in standard form, but instead x squared plus bx equals d. So our first one's already in that form, so our example here. So we're going to solve x squared plus 10x equals 5 by the completing the square method. Notice we already have 1x squared, so a value is 1. Our b value is 10, and our d value is 5, because it's d because we've moved it to the other side. Now we're going to complete the square by adding a new value to both sides so that the left side becomes a perfect square trinomial. So remember, our trick for this is we can take the middle term, and that's what it's supposed to add up to. And the outsides are 1 and something, so we don't know. But it should be something so that these two are the same. So this would be 5 and 5. So 5 times 5 would make 25 in this spot. Okay? But we add to the left side, we also have to add to the right side to keep it equal. All right, so this would factor into x plus 5 times x plus 5. Since it's the same thing twice, we just square it. And then 5 plus 25 makes 30 over here. So it'll become x plus 5 plus or minus the square root of 30. And then this is going to be, move the 5 over. So subtract 5 to both sides. I'll put it in the front this time. So negative 5 plus or minus root 30. And most books, you're going to see they're going to put that minus 5 in the front instead of in the back of the square root. Okay. So then we pull out a calculator and we type in our answers. So negative 5 plus root 30. I got 0.477, and that is, of course, rounded, so we'll do 0.48. And we're going to do negative 5 minus root 30. So negative 5 minus root 30 is negative 10.48. Okay. All right. You have a couple practice on this down here that you have to do yourself. So hopefully you're just checking them over. So in this case, we already have it in the right form. We have 1x squared plus bx, and then we move the c to the other side. So we need to just do the completing the square. So plus blank equals negative 9 plus blank. And then we figure out what goes on the blank. What are two numbers that would add up to negative 8 and be the same number? Well, that's going to be negative 4 and negative 4. So when I multiply them together, I know that I need 16 on the blanks here. Okay. So we're going to get x squared. Well, let's go ahead and factor that trinomial. So this will factor into x minus 4 times x minus 4. So we just put squared instead of writing it twice. And negative 9 plus 16 is 7. Okay. All right, then square root both sides. So x minus 4 equals plus or minus square root of 7. And then add 4 to both sides. So 4 plus or minus root 7. And once again, we pull out our calculator to type in our two answers because we're asked to round to the nearest hundredth. So one of our answers is going to be 4 plus root 7, which is 6.65. And our other answer will be 4 minus root 7, which is 1.35. All right, number 2, unfortunately, is not in the correct form. We have 2x squared. We need a 1x squared there. So I'll just divide all of the terms by 2. So x squared minus 5x equals 8. Okay, and then we got to do what can we fix to complete the square here on the left side. So we're going to add something to both sides. And we want these two numbers to add up to negative 5. So they have to be the same. So that's half of that would be negative 2.5. And then negative 2.5 squared is 6.25. So we're going to add 6.25 to both sides. All right, so when I factor this, it's going to factor into x minus 2.5 squared equals 14.25. And then we'll square both sides. So x minus 2.5 equals plus or minus the square root of 14.25. And then we're going to add 2.5 to both sides to get the x isolated on one side. So this is our exact answers. Okay, and then we're going to round it because we were asked in the directions to round. So our first one would be 2.5 plus the square root of 14.25. And I got about 6.27. And our second answer is going to be the same thing, but we're going to do subtraction of the square root instead. So minus the square root of 14.25. This is going to be negative 1.27. All right, flip the page and let's see about this quadratic formula stuff. So by completing the square method on the quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c, you can get a formula to solve for x, okay? You can see this work on page 727 of your textbook, and also if you look in Khan Academy, you can find a really nice video on this, okay? All right, so the quadratic formula works like this. The solutions of the quadratic equation ax squared plus bx plus c are x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And there's a couple of restrictions here. A, of course, can't be 0, otherwise we wouldn't even have a quadratic equation. And the b squared minus 4ac should be greater than or equal to 0 to get solutions here. If they're not greater than or equal to 0, then we just don't have any answers. So it's a parabola that's either all above the x-axis or all below the x-axis. Okay? So use the quadratic formula to solve 3x squared plus 5x equals 8. Okay, so first thing we'll put it back in standard form. So 3x squared plus 5x minus 8. Right in standard form here. Remember, standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then we plug in all of our parts. So the a was 3, the b is 5, and the c is negative 8. So I just replaced them in this formula. Okay? So we have negative of 5 plus or minus the square root of that 5 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay? And we work it out. So negative 5 plus or minus root 121. So I take a calculator and I type in all of this part under the square root at once. And that makes 121 in this case. And then the square root of 121 is 11, works out evenly. So we have negative 5 plus 11 over 6, which makes 1. And we have negative 5 minus 11 over 6, which makes negative 8/3. So the hard part about this is simplifying once we plugged in for the formula. Okay, I will give you some tricks to memorize the formula in class next time, but you do have to have it memorized. So number one, we have it in standard form already. So the quadratic formula says negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, one quick trick here is you can see the negative b over 2a, that acts as a symmetry formula that you already know. Okay, it's just adding and subtracting from it. So this part moves us left and right of the axis of symmetry, this b squared minus 4ac part. Okay, all right, so let's plug in our numbers. A was 1, b was negative 8, and c was 16. So we're going to do negative 8 plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16, all over top of 2 times 1. All right, so we'll do a little bit of simplifying. So 8 plus or minus, we're going to get an answer for that stuff under the square root in a second, over 2. So I'm going to pull my calculator out and work out the under the square root part. So that would be, see, negative 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16. So minus 4 times 1 times 16. Okay. I got 0. Well, that's really nice because the square root of 0 is just 0. So if I work this out, this is 8 over 2, which is 4. I only get one answer for this, 4. And if we go back up and look at our problem, this one can be factored. This factors into x minus 4 squared equals 0. And that's why it only has one answer. It's a really fast problem. But it's nice to practice on an easy one for the first time. All right? So number 2, same kind of thing. First, we're going to set it equal to 0 to get it in standard form. And that means our A is 3, our B is -5, and our C is 1. So we have x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative b is negative of -5 plus or minus the square root of -5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1 all over 2 times 3. All right, so negative of -5 is +5. And on the bottom, 2 times 3 is 6. And I'm going to take my calculator and work out that stuff under the square root. So -5 squared minus 4 times 3 times 1, which is just -12. This gives me 13. So this time, it's not going to work out evenly for me. Okay, so I'm going to round my answers and type them in. All right, so 5 plus root 13. That gives me about 8.6, and then I divide that answer by 6, which will make about 1.43. Or I do 5 minus root 13, which is about 1.39, and then I divide that answer by 6, and that gives me 0.23. So those are my two answers that make this equation work. Okay, both of them are rounded to the nearest hundredth. All right, let's flip it over. We have one word problem here, and then you get to try a couple yourself. All right. So for the period of 1985 to 2001, the number y and millions of cell phone users, service subscribers in the US, can be modeled by this function: y equals 0.7x squared minus 4.3x plus 5.5. Where x is the time since 1985. So in what year were there 16 million cell phone service subscribers? So our y is in terms of millions. This is 16 million. These six zeros get marked off when I plug in for y. So 16 million, that's in terms of y, in terms of millions, is equal to 0.7x squared minus 4.3x plus 5.5. Now we can solve this equation to find out the time since 1985 that would give us 16 million cell phone users. So 0 equals 0.7x squared minus 4.3x, and then I'm subtracting 16 to both sides to move it over into standard form. So 5.5 minus 16 is negative 10.5, so minus 10.5. Okay, so in this case, our A value was 0.7, our B value is negative 4.3, and our C value is negative 10.5. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So negative b, that's going to be like this, negative b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a's value times c's value. And I'm out of room over there. All over 2 times a's value, which is 0.7. So my x is going to be equal to, I'm going to do a little simplifying here, 4.3, and on the bottom I'll do 2 times 0.7, that's going to be 1.4. Okay. Plus or minus the square root of, and I'm going to go ahead and work out that whole square root thing. So negative 4.3 squared minus 4 times 0.7 times negative 10.5. That's where we had to kind of squeeze it in there. And I got 47.89. Okay, so now we're going to type in our answers. Okay, so we're going to do 4.3 plus the square root of 47.89. That gives me about 11.22, and then I'm going to divide that by 1.4. So one possibility is about 8.01 years later. Okay, so we'll check the next one. So 4.3 minus the square root of 47.89 divided by 1.4. My other possible answer is negative 1.87 years. Well, that one doesn't make sense. You're not going to go backwards in time to get that. So it's going to be about 8 years. So how many years since 1985 has it been? Well, 1985 plus 8 would give me 1993. Okay, so this is how many years? It is now 1993 when we get that. So in what year? 1993. All right, your follow-up down here is two equations. So solve each equation, round your solutions to nearest 100th. So you could pick any method, but I really suggest for both of them you use the quadratic formula, practice with it. Okay. And then number 3, if a soccer ball was kicked off the ground at an initial velocity of 30 feet per second, so that's the velocity going upwards at 30 feet, and the goalie caught the ball 4 feet above the ground, then how long was the ball in the air for? Hint, be careful, we want to know the second time the ball reaches 4 feet, not the first time it reaches 4 feet. Okay? So it's kind of going like this. Person kicks it. From the ground, it goes up, and they catch it at 4 feet. But notice right here, the ball also hit 4 feet. Okay? All right, your final answers are on the bottom, but you need to have work to go with them. I'll see you in class next time.